In criminal news, this is a pretty big bombshell, not just because there were some charges dropped against Diddy, but because of what that may represent. This morning, we have a formal letter. So basically, yesterday, the defense in the Diddy trial rested after just speaking only 20 minutes. A lot of people thought, well, why did they only talk 20 minutes? Why weren't they addressing this, that, and the other thing, other points we wanted to talk about? We're going to talk about that in this video. We're also going to talk about the fact that Diddy just had a pretty big win and that the government dropped two of the more severe charges in a desperate attempt, at least in my opinion, to hope to still get a conviction. Let's not forget that just a week or two ago, they also kicked off the only black male juror who probably, in my opinion, was to help because they thought they were behind on the case. Most of my colleagues, myself included, now believe that Diddy very well may walk because these are moves of what appear to be a panicked prosecution. Let's not forget, though, this case is taking place in the Southern District of New York. If you know anything about the Southern District of New York, you know that's where Jeffrey was tried, where a lot of other people get tried, where basically they get their convictions, essentially, is what, they get their convictions. Diddy scores huge courtroom victory as prosecutors drop key parts of charges. Diddy Combs scored a huge courtroom victory. In a letter to the U.S. District Judge Aaron Subramanian, prosecutors said they will no longer be pursuing theories presented during the Blockbuster trial, including that of the music mogul is involved in arson and kidnapping. Those are two very big charges. We're going to talk about what's left, which is just the prostitution and which is kind of hard to deny, the drug use, which is kind of hard to deny. The two acts allegedly were initially included in the government's racketeering conspiracy charges against Combs. All charges against him still remain. The charge still alleges that the 55-year-old was involved in transportation of prostitutes, bribery, witness tampering, and drug-related offenses. Now, all of these things were, I thought, pretty well proven. I mean, you had a individual from the hotel where he attacked his girlfriend, say he came in with a bag full of money. So it's kind of hard to deny that happening. The drugs is kind of hard to deny. The prostitution is hard to deny. Does that warrant 25 years to life? I don't think I could put a guy away for that long for just that, A lot of the testimony was really kind of like hearsay or, I didn't like this, but I participated in it anyway. There was kind of a lot of people that, to me, it seemed more like they were willing participants at the time, but now they regretted that. They seemed like retroactively, retracting their consent. There was text messages of people who were participating in these freak-offs, talking about, going back and watching the videos and and enjoying them and setting them up. It felt really hard. It felt very difficult for me. It was very difficult for me to believe that, he was forcing everyone to do this stuff. The decision, however, was made as a way to streamline the jury's instructions, which are being discussed in court today between lawyers and Judge Subramanian. The arson claim stems from rapper Kid Cudi's testimony when he claimed Combs broke into his house after discovering the relationship with his longtime girlfriend and main accuser, Cassie Ventura. After the alleged break-in, a Porsche owned by Kid Cudi was set on fire in the driveway. No one was ever even charged in the incident. So they have no evidence that it was Diddy, as far as I know, either. The kidnapping stems from Combs' former assistant, Capricorn Clark's testimony, where she said that she was kidnapped by Combs, who was armed and driven to Miskundi's home, where he allegedly entered the residence. I think that's Kid Cudi's real name. I think it was Kid Cudi. Yes, it is. David S. Weinstein, a former federal prosecutor who is now a partner at Jones Walker in Miami, Florida, told the Daily Mail that this decision is a partial victory for Diddy. He said that prosecutors had essentially conceded that they did not have enough proof for the kidnapping and arson charges and some of the trafficking claims. That is why they were abandoning them right before the jury was set to close the hearing, hear the closing arguments, he said. He said that it was wrong to say that these allegations were being dropped, as they were now no standalone charges for them in the first place. They were all included underneath racketeering or RICO charges. So it's not technically dropped, but for us lay people out there, they were dropped. Weinstein said in order to prove racketeering, prosecutors had to prove 2 or more acts that were covered in the statute. By not asking the jury to consider the kidnapping or arson or some of the trafficking charges, prosecutors would be leaning more heavily on other allegations. The other charges that he faces under the RICOs include possession of drugs, which is, he's not going to beat that. I mean, there's photos of it. With intent to supply, that's more hairy. He had the drugs, right? The other parts of trafficking, transportation of prostitutes, which is, you had at least 2 prostitutes say that, yes, they did do that. Bribery, which you had somebody show up and say, here's a bag of money. And tampering with witnesses, which also I think is difficult to disprove. But there was a lot of cross-examination in the testimony where these people who were claiming to be bribed or claiming to be, bullied or paid off or any of these type of things, like, they didn't appear as the best witnesses. And, I think that they got rid of, they got rid of the one juror that they thought could have been sympathetic. But I don't know. He said if these allegations are still in there, that allows the defense during closing to turn and point at the prosecution and say, here's a list they have to prove 2 or more. Did you hear anything about this one? You can't rely on it. There's no proof beyond a reasonable doubt. They're overcharging because they thought they had it. Then they can ask you why you should rely on any of the witness testimony. Another fact could have been anxiety among prosecutors about the impending July 4th holiday, which will lead to a 3-day week next week. Sometimes a holiday helps prosecutors, sometimes it won't. The 3-time Grammy winner denies racketeering, trafficking, and transportation. The racketeering and trafficking charges against Combs, who's currently locked up at Brooklyn's Metro Detention Center, carry a minimum sentence of 15 years each, and the transportation of the pros carry a maximum of 10. The jury was dismissed Tuesday and off Wednesday, due back in court on Thursday. Closing arguments are anticipated to take place both Thursday and Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. A charging conference, a meeting between the judge and lawyers, usually held outside the presence of a jury, is taking place today. During that time, they will discuss the final jury instructions and the rule of law as they must follow, deciding the case. I think more people than ever now believe that Diddy is going to walk. I have changed my opinion as well. Now that the case is done, now that the prosecution, in my opinion, seemingly had this desperation move of getting rid of the black juror, had this other desperation move now the day before the trial of dropping several charges from the jury's consideration. These are all things that they're worried that the jury is going to be able to say, wait a minute, this never happened. Diddy's prosecutors abandoned multiple allegations. Prosecutors indicated 3 allegations against Diddy would not be pursued by the government. Prosecutors indicated they're not pursuing. The government indicated in a letter to the judge, here's the letter. This says, the government respectfully writes regarding the requested edits to the court's proposal jury instructions. They're worried that the jury is going to get confused, or they're worried that the jury is going to say, wow, these aren't real, so what else isn't real? I think that's kind of the big worry from prosecutors. The government understands that the court's desire for streamlined instructions. With that in mind, the government has suggested ways to streamline these instructions. Specifically, the government has removed instructions from the charges relating to 1, attempted kidnapping, 2, arson, 3, aiding and abetting trafficking. The government is no longer planning to proceed on these theories of liability, so instructions are no longer necessary. The government has also attempted to simplify the language relating to count 1, a proposal of explained in the government's commitment bubbles that the government hopes not only serves as purpose of streamlining the instructions, but also to avoid any confusion to the operation agreement for count 1. I think that the prosecution is panicked right now. I think the prosecution thinks that they did not make a good enough case, or that they just put in too many charges. They tried to fly too close to the sun and put this guy away forever, when they probably only really had good charges on the the prostitution, which I think is undeniable, the drugs, which is undeniable, and also I don't know if there were any weapons charges, because you can't have weapons while you also have drugs in the house. So I don't know. The idea also that his defense team only had 20 minutes, only dedicated 20 minutes to their closing arguments, I think bodes well. I think that the defense team believes that the prosecution did not make a good enough case. They did not belabor the point. They didn't spend forever trying to convince the jury that the prosecution was wrong. I've talked to legal experts, and they basically said, look, the defense felt like all they had to do is go up there and tell the jury, look, these guys didn't make any sense. You can't, and if they're lying about this, that, and the other thing, what else are they lying about? If you can't convict on all of them, then you should convict on none of them. I think that's essentially what the jury probably told, what the defense attorneys basically told the jury. I think the prosecution may have fumbled the ball on this. I don't think there's any doubt that Diddy's a creep. I also don't think there's any doubt that he hired prostitutes and drugs. But I do think a lot of this racketeering stuff and forcing people into the freak-offs, I don't think they made a good case for that, which is why I think there's at least a 65-70% chance they're going to walk. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Give me a guilty, not guilty, and a percentage, and we'll talk to you again real soon.